Welcome, beautiful people, and thank you so much for joining us for another session of this very special event, The Sacred Wound as a Portal to Your Awakening, Embracing the Dark Night of the Soul. My name is Charlie Giles, and I am honoured to be your host for this powerful wisdom sharing event. Today's session, we're talking to a fellow Aussie and who is actually living in Sweden, Darryl Guy. Let me tell you a little bit about Darryl. So as an international shaman and healer, he's had the honor and privilege to sit with and learn from some of the world's most leading elders, shamans, medicine men and women from Australia, New Zealand, the UK, the US, Tibet, Peru, and Uruguay. This has given him a unique skill set that allows him to adapt to client needs as needed. So he does one-to-one healing, and that includes all kinds of entity removals, including things like exorcisms. And from 2010, he's been working in ceremony with his two master plants, the San Pedro and Los Santos Niños, the mushrooms, as well as assisting and co-leading month-long dietas as well. So please welcome Darryl for today's topic, Finding One's Way in the Darkness. Hi, Darryl.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you. And it's an honor and a privilege to be part of this event, and especially to be talking amongst all these amazing people that have been speaking. And it's great that a lot of people now are going to know there's more options that they have when when things get a bit tough.
Yeah, exactly. No, thank you so much for saying yes. I'm appreciative of your time and your energy. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I know we had a bit of a conversation prior, and we're very aware that we could probably both talk about this topic for maybe days. So we'll try to kind of give the best overall understanding of things about what you do, what you've learned, energy, and all those kinds of things, and we'll see how we go.
See how we go. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I thought that maybe the first place to start would be to kind of introduce the idea and the concepts of what energy is like for people in a trauma situation. So perhaps you could enlighten us a bit there.
Okay, so shamanically speaking, there's two worlds. There's the visible world and the invisible world, and they're both connected like this. You know, they're very intertwined, though we don't see it. And we don't believe it, or maybe we don't even understand it at some point. But it's the invisible or the spirit world that actually nourishes the physical world. So when we have trauma sort of dissipates the energy because it fractures what a shaman would say would soul fracture, leaving holes or gaps or cracks. So the nature of trauma, we react to the world depending on how our trauma is. So if you've had a very hard experience and a hard time with things, then you can become quite angry for no reason. You can become overtly emotional for different reasons. And it just comes down to that fracturing off or the soul loss. So, shamanically speaking, they say soul loss leads to illness. Because if we have our energy field, which most people know about the aura, if there's cracks and holes in there, then the energy dissipates out. But there's also a lot of people, it's the old I'm okay, even though things aren't really good. And what they're doing is that they're actually stealing energy from all around their energy system to cope with their keeping it okay mechanism. And I found this out myself when my parents died and had to sell the family home and stuff. I ended up in the Amazon with Ross Heaven. And, he said to me just that. He's like, look, you're stealing from everywhere to keep things in order, but it's just slowly draining you. So you have low spirit, you have low faith, you have low self-esteem. And as I said, you get a bit emotional for different reasons. It can almost be irrational reasons you get emotional. So the way I began my healing in that sense was with dieta work, and that was with a plant called Bobinsana. So Bobinsana is an Amazonian plant, which is, a few people know it. It's absolutely beautiful, but it holds you up psychologically, or holds you up emotionally, while psychologically you can get around the issue. So, and with this soul loss, I work a lot with my one-to-one sessions. The second part of the session is usually, it deals a lot about this soul loss. So if you can imagine, a lot of people have heard before that they see before the accident, but they don't remember the accident. So as a shaman, it's my job to go back to the place of the accident and get that part of the person that's still standing there at the accident, bring them back and then reconnect them. So when we fracture up through trauma or abuse, and it can be any kind of trauma, so mental, emotional, physical, it could be rejection, someone wanting a date and get rejection, that could be trauma. Doesn't have to be the big heavy stuff. But what happens is that these little cracks or holes open up in the aura, and most people try and fill them with addictive behavior or substance, and it's a losing bet basically, because it's just opens things up. So my job is to get that piece back and seal it, bring it back from the inside, and then seal it from the outside. So what happens in that respect is that now that piece over here is not freaking out. So while it's freaking out, you're sort of feeling the emotion over here. And it could be freaking out there for years and years and years, decades of time. But once that piece is back, that energy freak out that's over there is now calm. You're back with yourself. And there's a very different sense of wellness or emotional stability and calmness once those pieces are back. It's quite amazing, actually, how something so beautiful and so simple can be so deeply effective.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation of it. And I know that some people probably would have heard of soul retrieval and those kinds of terminology, but to give the visual that you've given around the idea that you've kind of split off and broken off because of that trauma, and then to get that back to make you feel whole. Is that, so just to clarify, is that's different to the holes in your aura?
Well, I'd say it's a root cause. The way the energies work is if we're very strong in our energy field, or what I would call the mechanisms, which is more than just the aura, but when you're strong in these processes, you have a very ideal sense of self. When you have your trauma, and this is the irony of trauma, because it's these traumatic events that will lead you to either being at the mercy of that situation and that the emotion, and maybe being caught in victim mode a little bit, or it's going to be the springboard for you to get a deeper understanding in the healing. Because we might go to heal one thing, and in the meantime we've healed 4 or 5 things and discovered things about ourselves that we don't know. But it's that energetic structure that needs to be strong. So when it's bright and luminous, and if there's no holes in it, it seems to have a strong luminosity. And that luminosity, again, carries back to someone's spirit. And you can see it in their eyes, before retreats and after retreats. That's one thing I always, it never fails to amaze me, in the sense that it's the eyes in the people. They come in with haunted eyes, and then when they leave, their eyes are bright and shiny, and that's a special thing about the healing that comes with this work.
I remember myself, one of the ceremonies, the shaman that I was working with had said that I had holes and I was leaking everywhere. And the difference in the feeling of being able to contain that energy, which obviously I hadn't experienced before because I didn't know I was leaking, but then the difference in being able to hold energy now is incredible. It's a completely different feeling.
You become less triggered.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's that very strong stability of, but again, it's that invisible world that nourishes the physical being.
And that's probably the part that I was trying to explain to people during this conference, is that it's that triggering when you constantly feel like you're defending your wound just out in the world. And what you're saying is you're connecting that part to the fact that your energy is leaking, like you're kind of constantly in this instability of emotion. That makes a lot of sense. It's really helpful.
When the first time I had a soul retrieval, I had no idea it was a soul retrieval. It was with a Apache shaman who I'd actually had a dream of. I had a dream of an American Indian in a cowboy suit, and the guy turned out to be real. you know, which is he was a Apache Paul, really, really good shaman. I said to him, I was too much in the sky and not enough on the ground, and I wanted to change that. So he didn't even really do anything magical or, you know, sing songs or rattles or anything like that. He just basically sat there and did work, and I didn't really feel anything. And then he said to me, "You had an accident when you were young." And then all of a sudden the movie played back. It was so typical. I remembered before the accident, but there was a lot in between that I didn't remember. So all of a sudden it had all came back, and I'd got this memory recall. And I realized, oh yeah, that's right. I went into the canal face first, and, you know, I really had a big accident, then went out and did what I did. So that was that first real, it was quite a weird experience to have a full memory of something that I only had a part memory before. And this came up later when I was doing training with Ross. I paired up with somebody to do soul retrieval work. And she came back with a story that I had no idea about. I couldn't remember. I really had no idea. And I thought she's missed the mark maybe, because that doesn't sort of sound like me. 6 months later, I woke up in the morning and I had to ring her up because I knew exactly what she was talking about. So even then it had taken 6 months to settle in, so that I could understand where that had come from in my wound, you know. And that was only just a hint that was later fully addressed by the mushrooms, when they sort of again brought back the memory and said, remember this is what happened, but that wasn't your future, you know. Like, more or less, I thought I'd solved my future back home, when my future really was this work with the plants as well, the ceremony and stuff like that. So memory recall is an important part.
Yeah, and I can imagine that would be in the whole healing process. You mentioned something a little bit ago about dieta and, you know, as part of a healing process. And I'm just thinking, a lot of people they might have heard the term, but a lot of people may not have heard the term dieta and not really understanding how is this relationship building with the plants. Could you go into that a little bit more?
Sure. Dieta is the traditional Amazonian way that the shamans work, one, to build up allies, but also as people work to heal. So you have plants like Bobinsana, which is a very beautiful female loving kind of plant that will help you get around issues. You have plants like Chancapiedra, which are literally translates as stone breaker. So it's going through different blockages, whether mental, emotional, physical blockages. So each plant will have its own particular skill set or its own particular specialty. So what you do in dieta is you basically have either, say, you can have a 7-day dieta, you can have a 10-day dieta, you know, 2 weeks or a month. So the time will vary. And basically you're on your own. Ideally, you're on your own, no electricals. But for 3 days, you drink part of that plant. So what Ross did for me, he would pick the relevant parts of the plant, put it into a bottle, fill it with water. That would sit overnight. And then the morning I start dieta, I would drink a third. And then the next day drink a third, and next day drink a third. During that process, you can't really eat any food that has personality. So no spices, nothing tasty. It's going to be very plain, maybe a boiled potato, maybe white fava beans and farina, so it's so that the other plants, which are our food, don't get interactive into your connection. So once you've had your 3 days, you then spend that rest of the time connecting as much as you can with the spirit of the plant. So the best way it was described to me was, if you're in a tree and there's another tree with a very beautiful bird, that beautiful bird's the plant spirit. So you need to make a beautiful nest. So that's getting yourself clean. You know, you have a pre-dieta diet if you can. So you're just very clean. So you get that bird to come over. And once the bird's in the nest, it needs for its feet to almost take root into the nest. So even though you might have the spirit of the plant and you might be making connections, you start rocking that tree, then the spirit can still leave. but the spirits also, they can reject you. They can accept you or reject you. But usually it's on advice of a shaman who knows the plants, who knows what to work with in accordance to your particular issue. So for that 2 weeks, you make the connections. Dreams will become important. They'll teach you through dreams, through meditations. You might get a song, and that song will be the Icaro, which is for that particular spirit. And the whole idea is for that healing to take place and make your aura stronger. So where you've been stealing from all those different places to keep things under control, that all gets replenished. You get replenished, and through your own recollection or recapitulation is another good word to use for it. It's a getting lost things back to make a wholeness. So as a shaman, we would diet plants because then they now become allies. And you can diet a plant and 5-6 years later be calling in on it. And if you've got that connection, it will come and help. You know, you might feel the emotional change, and then you start getting insights. Or if you've had a very strong dieter, you know that feeling of the energy when that plant is around, which is a really beautiful process. You lose a lot of weight very quickly because you're not really eating. For my dieter, we're allowed to have sort of really simple herbal teas, but my sort of giving was just to drink water for the whole time I was there. And like a plantain, which is a very basic, but not even a banana, it's a banana sort of impersonator, that becomes like super, super special, you know? So it's amazing the things that can come up when you're on dieter, because also your own personal issues tend to arise. You know, you're in that space, you're denied food, you've got no one to talk to. The only people you should be seeing are in ceremony. When you're in ceremony, connecting also with the plant and seeing what work the shaman can do. So, but that process of dieter is, again, it's to nourish the physical with the invisible spirit aspect of it. And for anybody that would like to do it, you know, it's well worth the effort. It really well worth the effort.
Yeah, totally agree. They're very powerful. I also love the fact that you have this enormous appreciation for smells and foods and everything afterwards as well. Like the way that's cleansed you so much, you suddenly, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and because you've just, you know, maybe been through 2 weeks and you haven't really eaten, you really have a second guess or a second thought of the stuff you would normally eat.
Exactly.
You know, like hamburgers almost become like these,
Yeah.
I'm not going to touch you for the next 15 years kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they're very powerful.
Yep.
I also want to talk a little bit about, like we're talking about, you know, energy, spirit, clean, healing. So now I want to kind of dive into this idea of attachments that people may not be understanding of. They're part of the invisible world of other entities and energies that can play havoc.
Okay, so as I said, we're in the visible and invisible world. We are lucky that we only see a certain spectrum of light. You know, like I always make the joke that if a lot of people knew what was around them, they really wouldn't jump out of bed. You know, which is the greater irony of this work, because there's a lot of things in the invisible world that will use us as hotels. So you can get attachments in many different ways. Usually an invitation, or what we would class as an invitation. So, you know, you play with the Ouija board, or you start channeling with something you don't know. You can go to a scary place, or you can go to a place that's a portal, somewhere that's got heavy energy or very strong or entity action around it, and you can just go there and walk near it, and they will sort of follow you home. You know, that's a bit of a freaky one, and something that a lot of people don't really want to recognize in Western culture is actually curses, family curses, or an energetic gesh, which is an energy that runs down through the family. So I'm sure people would have been speaking already in this conference about epigenetic trauma. And this is where your great-great-grandmother couldn't deal with the issue. It gets sent to your great-grandmother. If she couldn't deal with it, it gets passed down the line to those that have the body. And this is the other part that a lot of people don't realize. We have the physical body, therefore these entities or even demons actually need us because we're part of that physicality. You know, they need to, they don't have the body and we do. So depending on, you know, there's different entities, different sized entities, just as there's different sized demons, they all work in different ways. But essentially they can attach to your aura, because our auric component is the invisible world. So they can slip into there and give you feelings. They can also get into your head, so that they give you a certain psychological outlook, which produces an emotional content. That emotional content is their food. So like sex addiction and lust and things like that can be caused by an entity. So, and you know, one of the bigger invitations is sex, because you're literally letting someone into your energy. You're joining with somebody, and that's, you know, that's where it melds. But these attachments can you can pick up on public transport. You could pick up going to a haunted house. You could just pick up walking through an old part of an old town. So we have Old Town here in Stockholm, and that's, you know, very old buildings from the 1600s and a little bit earlier, but you can feel what's going on in some areas. So, but then again, some people build new houses and they have entity action in the houses because there's actually a spirit of the land. So there could be entities or spirits in the land also that have turned up after, you know, that were there before and the house has turned up after. So one example of that, I had a clearing to do, which was a couple of hours out of Stockholm, and this entity was quite large within the house. It was very, well, it was poltergeist in the sense that it could move things. So the main room that I went into, which was the children's room, ironically, one wall had cupboards and toys lined up along the front of the cupboards. So by the time I'd gone in and sort of done a circle, which is maybe 2 seconds, I turned back around and the toys were all up behind me and the cupboards were all open. You know, so that scares some people, but in my job, it's sort of, I know that now I'm becoming a threat to it, you know, because it's sort of showing a power. I ended up bringing it home here, and because I wanted to actually find out where it was from, what it was doing, and get a bit of background on it, because I'd never seen anything like that till that point. And it started to try and negotiate and make deals with learning and things. And I didn't want to make any deals with it. So, and it said, oh, well, I'm going to go. So then it left. The next morning I get a call, we think it's come back. So doing a return visit, I started to understand that this energy had been there for hundreds of years in that particular part of the forest. So I couldn't get rid of it because it actually had, you know, it was there before me, a long time before me. So it's not for me to kick it out, though what I could do was make a boundary around the house. And that was the deal. And then the house lost the activity. So, but as they can affect people, they can change people's personalities. Depression can be a very big symptom of these energies. Low energy, it could be eating you, using you as a like a Michelin star hotel, a Michelin star restaurant, sorry. So they can interact in many different ways. You know, they can make you want to do behavior that you wouldn't normally do, because again, that emotional content is their food.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting conversation because, as you know, I've had some experience with that as well. And what I've learnt from them is to not just assume that it's just some spirit that doesn't have any kind of intelligence or consciousness. People tend to get, you know, I mean, it does make people uncomfortable talking about them sometimes if they're unaware of how they work, because they kind of, it's like that idea from movies where if it's a ghost, you just sort of shoo it away. But the understanding of the fact that they do have a consciousness, they have an intelligence, they know humans probably better than humans know humans because they've been around them for hundreds of thousands of years. So they know that kind of fear-based energy that we give off and that, how much humans don't like themselves, right?
Yep.
And that's what they feed off.
The entities, like especially demon entities, they will exploit your weaknesses.
Mm.
You know, they can get in your head, and that tiny weakness of self-doubt can all of a sudden become really huge. And because it's a weakness, we also fall back into our old habitual patterns, that are around that weakness, which could also be formed from trauma, early on with trauma. So ideally, like, you can look at demons as being these horrible, awful things, but they're actually just doing their job. People love angels and hate demons. Angels might heal and demons might destroy, but both of them are doing their job. And if you look at an entity or something like this in a positive way, you have an opportunity to find out what your weaknesses are. And if you can map those weaknesses out and become strong, well, you've evolved as a soul. You've become probably a lot stronger as a simple human being, but then you're actually also denying these entities food. So the exorcism work is a bit of a strange one. That's work I never wanted to do. I didn't put my hand up for it, anything like that. Again, I was chosen by spirit to do this work. Because to be honest, demons scared the shit out of me. My second ayahuasca ceremony in the jungle with good old Ross, all those years ago, my ex at the time had an entity, and where they went to take it out of her, it jumped across the room, across the Malacca, and jumped into me. So I know what it's like to be possessed. You do some very strange, funny things. I took my clothes off and danced around like Mick Jagger for a while, naked there for a while. But I also got a really valuable learning. Like, it was a great night, in terms of experience, because it was a very different ceremony. But I actually didn't think that I could deal with that entity when I'd first seen it in my ex. So I was glad that they were going to work on it in the ceremony. But then I ended up having it in me. So the long of the short is that I would get it out, but it was flying around the room. They couldn't catch it. So they put it back inside of me, and then put me and the entity, or me and the demon, like a glass box, and then called in tobacco. So the spirit of tobacco is extremely powerful. It is a maestro plant. A lot of people think of just cigarettes. No. Tobacco is the plant that probably told the shamans to mix the capi vine with chacruna to get the drink ayahuasca. So being a powerful plant, it was used to suffocate this entity. And I remember not being able to get a deep breath, even though I wasn't being asphyxiated, but I remember I wasn't getting a deep breath. And then I felt the face of this entity come out. And then I'd recognize it because I'd seen it in my ex a couple of times. So they were able to kill it in that sense. And then I was good to go. So yeah, a nice bit of fun. But this is where, again, plant spirits can help immensely. Extraction work and exorcism are different stories. Extraction is that you can take small energies, even stagnant energies, out of people's energy fields. Extraction, in its 90% of the time, you're going to take a little bit into you as well, because we become the hollow bone. Whereas exorcism work, it's almost like a fight, in the sense that it's a banishment, which is a very different energy from extraction. So the first time I had to do it was the beginning of learning the Velada, Los Niños mushroom ceremony Velada with Ross. And he told me the day before that this Saint Cipriano character wanted to be where we were. And I had no idea about Cipriano, and he told me the story. He's basically become the unofficial saint for exorcism work, because he was the demonologist of Europe. So he knows all their names. So now we're at the end of the ceremony. Things have kicked off, and I'm doing work, and I felt Cipriano behind me. So we'd had a conversation earlier that day about the word Jesus tended to have quite a strong effect cross-culturally. So I thought in my head, okay, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. The woman's foot flew up and just missed my head. So I thought, okay, so once is a coincidence, did it a couple of more times. So when she started undulating bodily, I thought, okay, now I know what's going on. So it was just the beginning of learning about exorcism work. And that's a whole different story, you know. People might think it's cool and things like that. Essentially, the exorcist has to give, I have to give myself as a hostage to get that soul free. And then I have to be able to take myself back and have my guides around me, or my authority, what would be classed as by some as being an authority, in spirit, to actually take that away. Otherwise, it's going to be in, you know, basically I've just taken it from someone, put it into me. So an exorcism work is a lot different. It has its reward in the sense of the quality of life that you give back to people. But some of the ugly things I've seen, you know, I used to take it personally, and that's when I realized that if I got angry at these things, I'm playing the game, you know. So they're doing their job. I just need to do my job a little bit better than they're doing their job. And yeah. And it's very interesting because Western culture and Western society really doesn't want to accept that these things are there, simply because, one, they can't explain it, and two, they've got no cure for it. You can't take a pill for that. You know, you maybe take a pill that's going to zonk you out, but it's not going to get rid of the problem. So these shamanic techniques, which is one of the reasons why I really enjoy this work, these techniques are tens of thousands of years old, and they're practical techniques. And because they're practical, they have a definite effect, like immediately, even by distance. You know, as we've done work in the past, it's a bit weird to think that a conversation over Skype or Messenger, or, you know, even Zoom, can give you a profound sense of well-being after, just from doing a few things with the distance work.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. No, it's amazing and it's incredible. And, you know, just what you were saying then about people not kind of trying to avoid the conversation, or just, you know, I've spoken to people about it before, even in ceremonies. I've been even in the jungle. I remember one lady, we were, you know, there was people having them removed, and it was clearly obvious that it was happening. They're very loud and vocal and carrying on. And she was just refusing to believe that they existed. And I basically just said, well, that's perfect. That's exactly what they want. You know,
yep.
It's easier for them if you don't believe in them, because then you're not going to worry about, you know, protecting yourself, or be mindful of, you know, like you said, your own energetic health. And of course, those patterns and your weaknesses, you're not going to be mindful of it. So they love that if you don't believe in them. It makes it easier.
Yeah, you know, it's a really bizarre concept for some people to get their head around, that you can be a hotel for one or more things, where we would call it mental health.
Right.
You know, like, you know, don't get me wrong. I believe in Western medicine. I do believe in psychology, and psychiatry. They do have their places. Like, undoubtedly, they have their places because they're of use. It's just through my own experience and my own understanding and learning, I know that there are particular mechanisms in place, and that there are things in the invisible world that will use you as food, use you as a home, or even use you to spread out to other situations. You know, and I won't say it's an insidious thing, because it's around us and it happens. You know, ideally, again, if we start to understand our structure, we have an invisible content. So most people know about the 7 chakras. Not many people are aware that there's 5 above the head. So you have 7 of the visible world, and then 5 in the invisible world. And that matrix builds up and makes the aura. So there's a lot of spaces for these things to hide within your energy structure. A lot of people won't even realize when they're out of balance. So ideally, when I check, my pendulum will go clockwise. I mean, that tells me that the chakra's open and what speed or what size that it's moving at. If it's still, this is, this is a normal thing also, because especially the emotional, you have an emotional shock. It's like the kill switch in an electric box. It'll turn itself off rather than blow up. So when the chakras stop, that's stopped, but there's no flow. So you can get stagnant emotion, you can get stagnant mental capacity. It's when it starts going backwards, or anti-clockwise, I should say, starts going backwards. That's when I know that there's entities on or in somebody. And they could be in one chakra level, they could be in all of them. So even being in one, usually they'll sit around the solar plexus. The solar plexus and the heart are really big ones. If it's maybe like say incubus succubus, which is a more sex kind of demon activity entity, it'll be around the sacral chakra. But then you have the auric system. So if you have the chakras of the wheels, at a dimension deeper than that, you have this thing called the hara line, and it begins above your head and it goes through your body and anchors into the earth. And if the chakras are the wheels, this hara line is the axle. So on that line, there are three components. So there's above the head to the heart, and then heart to tendon, and tendon to the core of the earth. So if that's bent, your wheels are not going to be able to be in alignment for long. So, and a lot of people don't know about this line, which to me is a little bit, I find it a little bit frustrating, because that line in its essence can really change the wellness, just the sense of wellness for a person. But then again, at a dimension deeper than that, you have a thing called core star. And this core star is literally, if you close your eyes and you see a tiny little star in the dark and you can make that glow, it's this far, which is one hand width above your belly button. So most people know about tendon below the belly button, but the core star is above, and it's dimensionally deeper than the solar plexus chakra. So, but this core star is the essence of creation. People want to say it's the essence of God, or it's the essence of creativity. So when that can glow and glow up, you can then saturate your physical body with that energy and get it to go through your chakra system to saturate your aura. So now you've got a very high frequency, and it feels amazing. It really, really does feel good. A lot of people, when they have ecstatic experience, get this feeling that starts from here and builds up through the heart as the energy will go up, or the kundalini can raise. But ideally, if you feel down, you can look into your own darkness and you can see that core star and just imagine it getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And then you'll start to feel it. So if your aura's in order, your line's straight, and the core star's all pumping and working in good order, your frequency is going to be quite high, which means the lower astral things aren't going to get to you. They won't have an effect to you. And you start to starve the bigger entities and the bigger deems. And if everybody on the planet started doing it, then the ascension would happen, and then even the deems get to go back to God.
Yeah, perfect.
Right? So because as the frequencies raise up.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really, really helpful explanation. And it's good to kind of give the reason as to, that's the whole point. If we're all doing our work and we're, self-improvement and taking care of ourselves and healing, then it really does help the consciousness. I've got one more little topic that I just want to try and sneak in, because I'm keeping an eye on the time.
On the time, yep.
Yeah. But just one more topic, because I talk about it in my presentation about I'm really conscious of safety and the fact that there's so many ceremonies these days, because, as you know, ayahuasca and San Pedro, it's the trend now, which is, it's great. We want plant medicine to come out to the world, but the fact that obviously there are facilitators and shamans who aren't as experienced in, or there's even some who don't want to accept the fact that, entities are there, which is strange. But what would be your words of wisdom in this space of, I guess, entering into this world and how to really choose someone that's
choose what you do.
yeah.
Well, for me, if the plant plus the spirit, people will have that. People have mushrooms at home, or even smoke weed at home, or even cook their own ayahuasca and say they've had a ceremony at home. It's not a ceremony if you don't have a shaman. You're having a communion. And the difference between that and a ceremony is that the shaman is opening a portal in the space that you're sitting in. It has an energetic protection, and the frequency is a lot different inside than it is outside. So, and because a lot of people don't see what we can do, they think we're just saying things. Like at the beginning of a ceremony, it's just saying something. But ideally, everything that shaman's saying is setting up something in the room or putting it in place for the client's safety. But again, unfortunately, a lot of people see like you're sitting on the other side of the mesa and it's, it kind of looks like a cool job. It's easy to give out a cup. And I've had my experiences where I worked with one shaman who would open, mix it up, open and give the cup to everybody, but wouldn't close the ceremony because the medicine would keep working. So for me, I'll open a ceremony and I'll close the ceremony. The medicine does keep working, whether it's ayahuasca. Well, I'm not an ayahuasca shaman, but San Pedro shaman and Inyos shaman, mushroom shaman. The medicine will keep working after the ceremony. But the fact that when the ceremony is open, you now have access to a lot of attendant spirits that will come in. So and as I was taught with the mushrooms, especially, the saints like to come in, which is why we call them Santos Niños, which is the sainted children. It's hard to tell, like if you're going to go into ceremony and the shaman turns up with all the feathers in the hair and it's not really authentic regalia, you don't look like a shaman, to be a shaman. That's the first of all. And the difference is the shaman will do the job. It's not a talking situation. You can't talk someone through it. But again, as you know, Charlie, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that will take that opportunity to, I've had 4 cups and done 4 ceremonies so I can run my own. But then when you start coming up against problems, that the plants open up. So even if you have a plastic shaman who hasn't created the space, the plants are still going to react. They're still going to open people up. So trauma can come back. Memories can come back. They could be with entities. And this is another big issue, is that with some medicines, they don't differentiate between light and dark. So the shaman, and there can be a lot of dodgy things that some shamans will do, but you can go into ceremony and leave with an entity you didn't arrive with, just from the fact that you are now in a space with somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. And it's, it is unfortunate. Some shamanism is not a very generalized, everybody's got the same skill set. So there are some shamans that are pure plantas. They'll just be working with the plants. They know the healing, they know the songs, and they can work with that, but they can't work with black magic, or they can't deal with sorcery or exorcism. So, and then some shamans or people that are faking it to be making it, they don't want to know that those things are there, because then they're up against a job they have no idea what to do with. So do your research on people. Reviews are a good measure, but they're not the yardstick to really value or gauge how your shaman is. You'll know by the end of the ceremony. But unfortunately, plant medicines are so special and so amazing. You can have a plastic shaman there and you think it's been a great ceremony because the plant's giving you a really good time.
Right. Yeah.
It takes a long time to learn the work. I started shamanism when I was younger, in my teens, for my own spirituality, but I never did it to be a healer. I never did it to be to work in ceremony or to do any of this work. It was purely for my connection to spirit, because I had trust issues with religion and power and all that kind of stuff, like I still do. It was when I'd finished my first trip to South America that the last shaman had told me, you're never going to get a job in the real world again, because this is what you need to be doing. So, it can get a little bit nervous. If your shaman's nervous at the beginning of ceremony, you've got to wonder why, because they're not doing it for a first time on their own without any training. They would have been able to sitting with their teacher for X amount of time. And there's no book you can learn that will teach you how ceremonies work or how you're going to react or things are going to happen in the ceremony. It's purely a numbers game. So research your shaman, try and find out the authenticity, because everybody can speak pretty words, but really a good shaman, like my teacher Ross, he had practical techniques that I use also that he taught me, but he could also sing the shit out of people. Like I've seen him sing things into submission, and that's that's a whole mechanism with ayahuasca. The Icaro is the tool. So, but just do your homework, people. And if it doesn't feel right in there, then, the ceremony is not going to go forever. Wait for it to be over, wait for the medicine to stop, and then rethink who you're with. Because if it goes wrong, it can go very wrong. But also when it's a good ceremony, the amount of healing and the amount of goodness that can come out and change that people can take back into their life is amazing.
Absolutely.
But again, the plants don't fix all your problems, people.
No.
They'll give you the insights, they'll give you the advice, they might sort of show you ways that you can do things, but it's when you leave the ceremony the real work starts, because you have to go back to your normal life. And this is where it's about being a human. Don't run off to a cave to be a saint. Be a human and be the best human you can be. Be nice to people you don't like. That's being an amazing human. But really, that's all it's about. We all have our traumas. Like I've made the joke to you before, Charlie, our parents give us the greatest gift of life, but they can also sort of fuck us up a little bit, give us those early traumas. And a lot of people like to blame their parents. But as a shaman, something I didn't know 20 years ago, we choose our parents to incarnate through. So if you're going to blame your parents for something that they did to you, you're really the one that should be taking the responsibility. Yeah. Because it's, again, bringing back to the beginning, it's how we react to situations that decide the healing. If we have a situation that would make us go crazy, we work on it and we understand maybe the causes, the problems and the solutions to it. That situation is going to come back into your life to test you, undoubtedly. You can go through it here and think, I'm okay, it feels okay here, but it's going to turn up here again to see how you react to it. And if you have a different reaction to it, then your trauma is going to be well and truly on its way to being healed. Or it's going to let you know that the trauma is still there to be worked on because you've gone back into an old habit.
Beautiful.
So a bit of a crossover there.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And it's kind of a perfect place to just, what a well-rounded, great conversation I think we've had. Yeah, I think we covered so much in there as far as where it starts and then how to, really look out for those things when choosing a ceremony as well. So I really appreciate that conversation. I am conscious of the time, and I definitely want to leave room for you to, because you have a free gift for everyone. Do you remember?
Exactly. Yep.
Do you remember?
I remember. Okay, so my free gift is video meditation. And what I do is I'll take you through the different points of awareness. So, you can understand a concept, but to have awareness of a concept is a very different reality of being. So, as I said before, if you can build up your energy structure and you can be strong, you'll have a different sense of awareness to know when you're clear, to know that you've just walked into a building and you've walked out with something. That all comes from awareness, because our perception is directly caged by our awareness. So my free gift will be a small video meditation that introduces what I call resonant life, which is basically everything that I've learned to keep me protected that I would like to start teaching people. You become protected and connected, but this 3 points of awareness, amazing, that we interact with the world from either a mental, emotional, or body awareness. And depending on where we react from or where we interact from, will actually flavor the quality and the content of the experience. But that's what I'll be showing in the free gift meditation.
Sounds perfect. Sounds fabulous. Thank you for that. Yeah. So, and also if people want to find you for a long distance healing or all the other things that you do, where's the best place to contact you?
Okay. So, so distance sessions I can do with anybody, anywhere. This space is free, more or less. But you can contact me on 3 Worlds, which is 3 as in THREE, Worlds, WORLDS, one word, .SE. And there you have my services that are available, how to contact, always ask a question. There's booking forms, there's all the information there you can look at. And that's where the free gift will be also.
Okay, perfect.
As one of those pages.
I'll make sure it's all up on the screen and available anyway, but it's good to hear from yourself.
No worries.
Okay.
And love to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the most important part of this work is returning a quality of life to people, because I've lost my quality of life. We've all lost a quality of life. And when we get that quality back, living becomes that better thing again, because we're all here for a reason. We incarnated this time to go through these situations, and it may not be easy, but it's not impossible.
Absolutely. And I can definitely vouch for that. I mean, the whole difference in my quality of life is the reason why I'm wanting to do this summit, is because it's that, you want everyone to experience it when it's so different, where you've come from, and you're like, everyone needs to do this. Everyone needs to focus on this.
Well, we're all get a chance to heal. Mm-hmm. Just make sure you do it before that last 10 minutes, because that last 10 minutes, you want to be looking forward, not back at what you didn't do.
Right. Yes, good advice. Well, thank you so much, Darryl. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. I know that people will just get so much out of it, such a huge lesson to learn for themselves as well. And the fact that you're giving a free gift that's going to help people immediately is just so fabulous. So thank you so much.
Welcome, Charlie. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Mm-hmm. And all you wonderful people that have been attending the summit, I hope you find the options that you need and the availabilities of people that are going to help you get through what challenges that we all have ahead, because we're not going to run out of challenges, that's for sure. It's just how we meet them will decide the outcome. So, but good luck, everybody. Bliss and bless. Good to see you all.